I was literally taking the subway to JFK. I had like $149 in my bank account, but then flying Air France business
Let's
class to
go.
the Seychelles for a weekend trip.
Hey everyone, I'm Morgan Debaun, a passionate entrepreneur and life advisor. With the Journey podcast, you'll discover that success isn't about the destination, it's about the journey. I'm sharing stories of amazing people who've taken control of their lives. Join me on my own journey to discover the secret sauce behind reaching success with permission from no one else. Welcome to the Journey podcast. I am joined today by Brian from the Points Guy, OG media mogul, serial entrepreneur, new dad, and also went through an acquisition to Red Ventures, which I think is like one of the coolest companies that people like literally don't know exists. I had the opportunity to meet Rick a couple years ago, and he was just so helpful at giving me
Yeah.
advice on how to not be distracted by the shiny things in digital
Yeah.
media. Well, how did you get started with the Points Guy? Give our audience a little bit of context.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. And funny enough, I actually sold the company originally to a company called Bankrate in 2012, which was a publicly
True.
traded company. And then Bankrate got acquired by Red Ventures in 2017. So I kind of feel, and somehow I'm still there 13 years after starting the site as like a little blog. So my journey selling, kind of double selling the company and then reframing my role has been really interesting. And I'm happy to share all the ins and outs of that because this was never supposed to be a big business. I would say like I started learning about points in the 90s. So I'm 40 years old. It was like 1995, 96. My dad got a job like traveling a ton. And I was always a computer whiz. I was like that mid 90s dial up internet game. And my first job for my dad was booking his travel
Mhm.
and he would pay me $10 per flight. And then I just like kind of learned over the years, I would figure out how to use his points so we could all travel to the Caribbean for free. I'm one of four
Mhm.
kids. So I grew up in the Philly suburbs. We were like not a fancy, all my friends were going to Europe and we never left the country, but we grew up firmly middle class. My mom's one of 10 kids. Like they didn't grow
Mhm.
up going to Europe. So, but
Right.
I always just knew travel was for me. Like living in suburbia, great place to grow up, but I just was always like, there's such a bigger world out there. And I was a really voracious reader as a kid,
Mhm.
like, couldn't read enough books. And so I think my imagination and travel, since so many books are in amazing destinations. So, long story short, like, that's how I started to get involved with points in the 90s. And then when I got a job at Morgan Stanley in 2007 after college, I started all of a sudden, I was my dad. I was traveling and doing all of their tech
Right.
campus recruitment and also our LGBTQ recruiting. So
Mhm.
I was like our head tech recruiter, convincing computer scientists from MIT and Stanford to join Morgan Stanley. And my main job was just to get people, instead of working at Google or Yahoo, which
Mhm.
is where every tech person wants to work.
Yes.
So Morgan Stanley gave me a corporate card that was literally like, spend whatever you have to spend.
Let's
Like,
go.
so all of a sudden one day I called up Amex and was like, can I get the points for this? And they're like, you have to pay $95. Most people don't want to do that. And I'm like, $95? I'm spending like 200 grand a month.
Yeah, I can do
So
the
all
math
of a
on
sudden,
this.
yeah. So, and of course, in '08, we all know what happened in financial services. So luckily I never lost my job, but I was in HR in my 20s. Like I was not making the huge bonuses but what I was making was bank in terms of points. I was still traveling. And during the recession is a great time because all the hotel companies and airlines had insane promotions. So while I was literally taking the subway to JFK. I had like $149 in my bank account, but then flying Air France business
Let's
class to the
go.
Seychelles for a weekend trip. So that was kind
Right.
of like how I put points and everything for myself. And then enough years of going by of not getting a raise, I was like, I just need to, like, I was living paycheck to paycheck. $70,000 a year in New York City is
Yeah.
not enough to like,
It's tight.
you know,
Tight
I, I
budget.
I was so sick of like going out to dinners with my friends where I'm like, oh God, please, not that moment where you have to split the check,
Share it. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you're just
Yeah.
like, I don't think this card's going to clear. So I started the points guy. My ex boyfriend at the time was like, you're so amazing with our points. This is a skill, right? And I did notice like everywhere I went, and even at work, like I worked with PhDs in computer science, and most of them were
Mhm.
clueless. A lot of them lived in India and China, and they're like, I would love to go see my family. Like, you're traveling. So I would sit down with the most intelligent people in the world. And I'm like, how did they not know about points? Like, what's so natural to me. So that was
Mhm.
my first side hustle as a points guy. It wasn't even a blog. It was just I was a points travel agent, and you could
Mm.
pay me $50, and I would tell you, you want to go to Paris in June with your wife,
Boom, boom,
pay
boom.
me $100, and I would just do it in 20 minutes. So I was making like, $100 here, there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that to me was like just trying to get ahead. I think I was still in credit card debt, and then a friend said, you should really start blogging. And this is 2010. So June
Right.
of 2010, he set me up with the WordPress site. And I remember so vividly, he was like, he was an SEO expert, and I didn't know what
Mhm.
that was at the time. And he's like, I set your site up. He goes, what you have to promise to me is don't do any weird stuff. Don't try to buy links from China.
Yeah.
He's like,
Yeah.
you have
Yeah.
so many. He's like, you have so many stories and so much knowledge. He goes, write one blog post every single day at the same time.
Mhm.
He's like, trust me, I know how the algorithm works, and people will find you. And that's what I
Works.
did. And it within like 6 months, it really started to take off. And then it was like spring of 2011 that it was growing and growing. And credit card companies approached me and were like, you know, our credit cards better than we do. And by the way,
Right.
we all love your site. It was like this really weird meeting. Like, I had no idea anyone was really, when you blog and you put content out there, right? A lot of times we're like, you can see on a paper like the numbers, okay, a bunch of people read this, but you always self doubt, like, are
Right.
people really, or did someone stumble on
Are these
this,
humans? Yeah.
right? Like, so anyway, they basically were like, we want you to be an affiliate. We'll pay you for promoting all the cards that you're already talking about. We'll
Right.
pay you. It just, and then also at the same time, the New York Times had emailed me, and I met with their frugal travel columnist, and everyone in the
Mhm.
press back then was saying points are useless, blackout dates, you can't use it. And here I am, and I'm like, these people are wrong. That's the lazy journalist approach, the sensational headline to just, because everyone hates the airlines, right? We get that. That's an
Yeah.
easy story.
Easy out.
But I was like I was the contrarian view, and I was like, I sat down with the journalist Seth Kugel, who is dating someone in
Mhm.
Brazil, and at the end
Mm.
of our 3-hour meeting where I whipped him into shape with points, he was like, this is life changing. I get to see my girlfriend, and I didn't have the money to do it,
Yeah.
And he was, so about a month later, I didn't know if he was even going to write about it. I knew I nailed it, but he wrote like the number one travel website every budget
So
traveler must be
good.
reading.
Boom.
And so that was yeah, that was the day I quit my job. And it's been an amazing ride ever since.
That's so incredible. And like media is just like the hardest industry in the world. I'm sure you said tell people the same thing, but like when people are like, I want to build the next da da da, I'm like, oh, are you sure? Like it's just such a tough industry. I want to actually go back to your travel origin story because it resonates with me with a lot in a lot of ways. My first experience with travel was traveling with my dad, who's a doctor and a research doctor specifically. So he would go and travel to all the different conferences and he would use his expense card for, his grants and things like that. And then he would book my trip with him on points. And we would always stay at the Marriott. We would always fly
Yeah.
American Airlines, like no matter what. And I remember him teaching me like, "Oh, like, we didn't pay for this." I'm like, "What do you mean you didn't pay for this? Like, I don't understand what you're saying." You know? It's like, "Oh, we booked it with points." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is so interesting." And then, when you're a kid and then there's like kind of you know what's going on, but you don't apply it to your life quite yet. So I didn't have a credit card and I really wasn't comfortable with debt until really it had to have been, like, post-college, like, in my
Hmm.
mid-20s, because I was just terrified of, like, all the horror stories you hear, and they tell you don't
Yeah.
open credit cards in college and things like that. So I didn't really have a credit score, I didn't really have anything, but my co-founder of Blavity, Jeff, he was traveling like, he is your super fan. Like, he would travel to Dubai and back and left and right, up and down just to get the points so that he could finesse into these different levels and things like that and buy points and transfer points from cards and all the cool stuff. So he was like, "Morgan, you travel
Yeah.
too much for Blavity and, like, fundraising and things like this. Like, you travel too much. You've gotta figure this out." So he was the first one who helped me open my I think it was a Chase Sapphire was the first one that I got. And then from there, I'm better at points now. The other thing that I find really interesting that I think I learned too late in the game is having a conference business is critical for like accumulating a ton of points because every time we book a huge hotel, all the points have to go somewhere. And for many years of Afrotech, which is like, buys out a whole city, I'm like, where did those points go? Like, who finessed me
You
in my
left
own
those
company?
you left the points on the table.
I think I left the points on the table. So I've learned the hard way as well, like what to do, what not to do. And I think I mean, you really did set the trend of like people being smart, independent consumers and like being able to leverage the power of what they're spending to their benefit. I'm curious from your perspective, like how you feel like the industry has changed now that so many people are savvy point consumers. Like, do you feel like it's gotten more difficult for people to navigate it?
Yeah, so interestingly, like every industry changes with time. And when I started in 2010, so there's this whole subculture of crazy miles and points people. And I really found that in 2004 when I was in college, I was student body president, and I basically was like Googling around and found this whole like Flyer Talk is the community name. And it's like people around the world. That was my aha moment where I'm like, there are people who do this for a living. So for a
Hmm.
decade, I was doing it with my dad, for fun, and then I realized like, oh, this is real. So, but when I started the points guy 6 years in 2010, people hated me, and people still do hate me because I share these deals. Right? It's so funny because
Mm,
I'll tip people off to Global Entry and Clear because I believe in them, but then people will say, well, I got in. Why stop recommending Clear? It's too busy
not
at
the
the
lines
airport. And
alone.
I'm like,
That's
it's
not how
like,
this works,
let me
guys.
in and now stop it, So,
Yeah.
the game has changed, but actually I would say, high level what's happening is these freaking flyer programs, these are how the airlines make money. This is
Mm,
not like the airline is taking a loss by giving you a free flight. Flip that on its head. The airlines make more money selling miles and points to credit card companies than they do flying airplanes.
mm.
Delta, you look at they release all this information. Delta, I think it's $8 billion of their pure profit is like coming from their Amex relationship.
Oh,
Throughout the pandemic,
fascinating.
they
I
all
didn't
were
know that.
selling. Yeah. Yeah. So whatever crisis it is, the airlines lean on their loyalty programs to get them through the tough times because they can sell advance miles to these credit card companies. So high level, what's happening is yes, a lot more people have points and credit cards. So the amount of miles needed to take a free flight has increased overall. So, 10 years ago, it was 25,000 miles. You could pretty much fly domestic anywhere. Now it's what we call dynamic pricing. So
Mhm,
it is more expensive, right? 80,000 miles to go to Miami when you used to spend 40.
mhm.
So on surface level, you might say, well, oh, that's horrible. The game's over, right? False, because that's on the redemption side, prices have gone up. On the earning side, and the US is a mecca. I apologize to any listeners who are based outside the US because the points game is like half or less as valuable there. The US is truly amazing where you can earn points for everything. There's 100,000 point sign up bonuses almost all the time. There's
Right.
probably 25 solid credit cards to get. I have 27 credit cards in my wallet. Well, I don't carry them in my actual wallet because I can't
That's
fit them.
intense.
But it's like and especially as a business owner, you can have business credit cards, and the US is just really lucrative. So you can earn more than ever before. So what I would
Mhm.
say is if as long as you're staying ahead of the curve earning and you have credit cards that reward you for whatever you're spending on, and now you can earn 4 points per dollar on dining with an Amex Gold card, right? Like that's
Yeah.
4x on dining and groceries. And those are categories we all spend a lot of money in. So the goal of the points game is if you're smart, you have multiple cards, you're
Mhm.
maxing out where you spend the most money on, but I want to also urge to people these days, it's not just the points, it's the perks. So, and I'm not just
Mhm.
talking lounge access, which the lounges are getting crowded because everyone has, the credit cards are trying to whittle down the herd there in terms of who can
Yeah.
access the lounges.
Especially
Because
Delta.
what's the point of,
Brutal.
yeah, Delta just made some brutal cuts. American Express this year kind of
Yeah.
took back their generous guest policy. But perks like when your flight's delayed 4 or more hours, if you use a Chase Sapphire or Capital One Venture, you can actually get reimbursement. So you can get a hotel room, so you get a car, you
Mm.
can because the airlines don't give you anything. We all know how bad the US airlines are. There's no legislation that mandates. It's
So
a
bad.
it's a rogue world out there, but the credit cards are where you're going to get compensation when your bag goes missing, when your flight's delayed.
Mm.
So I urge people like the points game isn't just like the points, it's also the perks. And
Yeah.
look at, I mean, so many, I love blowing people's minds. Like if you ever lose a pair of nice sunglasses on vacation, all of us have done that. Always call your credit card company because they will, depending on when you bought them, literally just reimburse you right then and there, and they'll just take it off. I lost a $2,500
Okay.
Montclair jacket filming for the Points guy in Iceland. We were going shot to shot, and I left this beautiful Montclair jacket, $2,500, and I called up Amex, and they said, "Oh, that sucks, but yeah, it's taken off." That night, it was already taken off my statement, and because I bought it like a month earlier. So there's
What?
a lot of facets to this points world that you can get lots of value back if you know how to maximize it.
Yeah. So we have an Amex system for Blavity. And so, I have the Amex Platinum. And the upgrades have been life-changing, like the hotel upgrades, and I've got concierge key on American Airlines. So I get like double upgrades at certain hotels, and I wind up in like the presidential suite for $100. And I'm always sometimes I feel guilty. I'm like, is this how people get this stuff? Like, are people actually paying these prices, or is it just giant finesse and actually no one's paying for any of this stuff? Like, what is your
Oh, no,
perspective
there's a
in
lot of
terms of like
people are paying. People are paying, but the savvy people, and I'll give you a tip on, so find hotels and resorts I love as well. Amex,
mhm,
anyone with Amex Platinum. A hack that I learned recently is if you book them online, your upgrade priority is lower. So if you have an Amex Platinum or Centurion card, never book
mhm,
Fine Hotels online. What you do is you pick up the phone, call Platinum, and speak to an agent. And the agents, when they make your reservation under their account, they have higher priority, and they will send a message to the hotel, "Hey, take care of my client," because they actually get a commission. So, A, when you go and book your fine hotel online, no one's getting a commission. So, to be
right,
good to someone, pick up the phone and give that platinum agent
right,
your business, same price,
yeah,
and ask them to like contact the hotel. Is it a special event?
let them
That will like
know.
leapfrog. Yeah, you'll jump up on that upgrade list. But one little
Always
tip
pays
I've
to
learned
call.
recently.
There's another tip that I have for people who are like, "Ooh, more tips." When you're trying to book a reservation at a restaurant, be your own assistant. Like, call and be like, "Hey." I mean, I've used Amex Platinum actually to book, like, restaurant reservations that aren't available, and they're always available. You can always figure it out. But if you call and say, "Hey, I'm Morgan's assistant. She's coming into town, da, 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 da," like, the chances of you getting a reservation are much higher because you just seem more important.
Or go through your hotel concierge if you're staying at a hotel. Or, I mean, I'm not saying to be fraudulent, but like you could always make a hotel reservation that's cancelable, call that concierge, ask them to make the reservation, at the Four Seasons
Motivations.
or whatever. Just saying,
It
you can be
works. That
pretty
stuff
clever to
works.
get into the hot restaurant.
Yeah. I guess depending on the city, be careful with that one. But yeah, in the US, I think everything is pretty straightforward. What are your thoughts on how like employees can leverage credit cards in their workplace? Like at our company, people can take the company points, right? Like that's the company's points, but you can expense. If you want to get reimbursed, you can use your own cards. You just have to wait for that time for reimbursement. What
Yeah.
advice do you have for people that are trying to like
Yeah.
balance their cash flow and things like that?
Yeah, whenever possible. I mean, and if your company pays quickly, then
Yeah.
definitely. And if you're not going to get on the hook, if you're going to be, delinquent on your expenses, that can be challenging. And if you're getting, so the point of the whole points game and credit cards, it's dicey. If you cannot pay your bills off in full every month, the amount of interest you pay is going to negate the value of points. And I
Mhm.
was in credit card debt. I did the dumb thing in college where I got the free t-shirt and I thought it was free money, and I was
Mhm.
dumb and I booked a free trip to Ireland because it was only $300. And then all of a sudden
Got
I'm like,
stuck.
wait a minute,
Yeah.
I'm not making enough. And like, that's the worst. And if you're in credit card debt, the great thing about it is number one, just make sure you dispute any negative things on your credit report. A lot of times, if
Mhm.
the people don't respond, it'll drop off. There's a lot of phony companies that'll do this for you, but it's very easy to do yourself.
Yeah.
As someone who's been in bad credit, the biggest thing is pick your head up out of the sand and attack it head on
Just
because
get after it.
hunting it down the road does not, people think, oh, if there's 7 years, it'll all go away. And it's really, some will, but like the best part about credit in the United States is the two biggest are paying on time. So even if you can't
Mhm.
pay it off in full, absolutely always just make that minimum payment at a minimum. That's like so, so critically important. But
Mhm.
two, your credit score will start going up immediately once you start paying your balances down. Because the second biggest factor of your score is how much available credit you have and how much you're using, the debt to
Mhm.
credit utilization. So if you are maniacal and just get that debt paid down like clockwork, I promise you, as your utilization goes down, your score will go up. And it'll take a little while, but just make sure you're paying them and disputing anything negative. If you do miss a payment, immediately call them. A lot of times they'll give you a
Yes,
grace, they'll take it off for free, but you've got to stay ahead of the
on
game.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I messed up my credit by accident. I had a something that was on auto pay and then I changed cards and then I forgot about it was some super small,
Yeah.
like I carried a very low balance on it. And I had switched addresses. I moved a lot when I first started Blavity. Yeah, I just moved from
Yeah.
different cities and different apartments. So went to the old address and then I was actually trying to buy the house that I'm living in now and getting my first mortgage. And as an entrepreneur, I mean, like our income and taxes look
Yeah.
crazy until you wind up, in a stable place. And my credit score was off, and I was determined to get this house. And so I actually added myself to my parents' credit card because
Yeah.
they have so much credit and they pay their bills. And that immediately jumped me up, and it was just these are things you don't learn in college.
Yeah.
These are not things that people will
Yeah.
tell you.
Yeah, that's a great, yeah, American Express specifically, you'll inherit all the good credit. Now on the flip side, if you're attached to someone with bad credit, you can also
No,
be
no, no, no,
taken
no.
down.
Yeah.
One final thing I'll say, like for people who are business travelers, so yeah, pay for everything if you can on your own card, but there's also a lot of other ways that people don't realize to earn miles, like shopping online. So all the major airlines and hotels have shopping portals.
Mhm.
So never go directly to a website. And I'll just give one example. So United Airlines has United Mileage Plus Shopping. And how it works is you just put your United number in, American and Delta, all of them have this. It puts a cookie on your computer. And then when you click through to a retailer, like I shop a lot at Neiman Marcus, so I can
Mhm.
get up to 8 miles per dollar on those purchases. And, if you're buying business supplies or anything like that, you can go through shopping portals, use your credit card. And then so it's like double dipping because you earn miles
Mm.
for clicking through the portal and you also earn miles for paying with a credit card. It's two separate batches of miles, and it's all the same shopping experience. And
Right.
whether it's back to school shopping for your kids, I love Verbos. Like I said, vacation rental by owner. Now that I have a kid and a nanny,
Yeah.
United actually will give you three miles per dollar on Verbo, and you just have to book
Mm.
through United. Takes you directly to Verbo. So, and those are pretty big ticket expenses. So, with the American Airlines, their new elite program is you actually earn elite miles for all spent on your credit card and on activities like online shopping. So I have American
Fascinating.
Airlines exec plat just from all of my crazy online shopping,
Right.
business expenses, et cetera. So also, one other thing is you can get dining programs. So there are restaurants all around the country that'll give you like extra miles just for signing up to the program and paying with the registered card. So if you're doing a lot of business entertaining, I did this at Morgan Stanley. I ran our internship program. So there were
Right.
60 interns and you know every
Lunches,
other week we'd
dinners.
do like a big lunch in Times
Yeah.
Square and I would always go to these mileage or the Sky Miles dining restaurants and they're not Michelin starred restaurants, but they're like
Sure.
decent places. But if you're hosting a big dinner, a holiday
Yeah.
party, look up. So not only will you get your Forex points for using your Amex Gold to pay for it, but the dining program gives you a separate tranche of miles just for
Mm.
being registered, and it's
And is
free.
this because they're
So
just getting your
dining,
first party data? Like, is it because they're able to then collect a better profile for you?
yeah, these restaurants want more incremental business, right? So these restaurants are spending a lot of money advertising locally, whatever. They know that there are these dining programs that and there are people like me that I'll give business. If I have two similar restaurants and I have to host an event, I'll go to the
Yeah.
dining restaurant. And especially if your work's paying for it, right? So you can get your credit card miles, your dining program miles. When I was at Morgan Stanley, I was raking in tons and tons of
Yeah.
points, especially if you're like
I
an
can be.
administrative assistant, an event planner,
That's so
no
cool.
brainers.
So fascinating. I want to just transition selfishly into traveling with a baby. So I'm a bit terrified. I'm on the road, you know, 2 times a week. Like I literally in this call and fly to Atlanta. And I go to New Orleans this weekend and I'm just all over the place. And you can't put babies in hotels. And like, I will likely also have a nanny who comes with me or my mother-in-law or my mom. How have you planned for that?
Yeah, so I have a 6-month-old son, Dean. I'm a single gay dad. I always knew I wanted to be a dad, and I knew, you know, I was nervous, of course, but all the parents I talked to, a lot of other travel influencers have had babies the last couple of years, so seeing them
Mhm.
travel with their kids, and it is true, the earlier you get them started, and especially in the very beginning, it's actually easier to travel with an infant than it is with a 2-year-old who's mobile and may not wanna sit in their seat. So my son's been to 6 countries in 6 months.
Wow.
He was a healthy baby. My doctor's like, and I personally believe, and you're I think the number one thing with parenting is you're gonna get opinions from everyone. And what I've learned is I know what's best for my son, and I'll take tips from people, but like
Yeah.
people will shame you even for traveling with the 4-month-old, but you got to tune
Because of
all
like
that out.
vaccines
I
or
think,
what? Like,
yeah,
what's the
like,
rub?
you know, especially in the first 90, so in the first 90 days of a baby's life, if they get a fever, they may have to get a spinal tap. So really for
Mm,
90 days, like I did lay low. I mean, of course, I traveled with my son at 3 days old because his surrogate was on the other side of the country.
sure.
So you do what you have to do. You want to protect your kid, but also, so many people have split families. My biggest tip is the Duna stroller. So the Duna stroller is amazing because up until like 28 pounds, so usually like 9 months a year at least, it's a car seat that you click a button and it pops into a stroller,
Mm.
and it fits on all airlines. So
Mm.
for for kids who are 0 to 2, they can actually fly for free in your lap. But I've been using points to pay for a seat for Dean because I can stroll him through the airport on a stroller, and then you click a button and push it down. It turns into a car seat. You bring it on the plane, you buckle it in, and he sleeps the whole flight. So some planes will actually have the bassinet where you can lay your kid in it, but when they're strapped in a car seat, it's actually the safest for them. That has made
And they don't
travel. I mean,
make you
for
check
really the
the car seat?
no, no, because the car seat is
Small
FAA
enough.
approved, and it fits in any coach seat. It's like, so it's not the biggest, they will grow out of it because it's not the widest car seat, but it's the car seat that I use going back and forth, in the car. It's amazing because there is a base for it, but you can also, once you get out of the airport, you can fold it down and put it in an Uber and put a car seat through, a seatbelt through it. So it's super, super easy. Any parent who travels will tell you the Dune is where it's at. It's expensive, but it's well worth it. And, I think babies and children in general pick up off your vibe. I remember traveling with the dog, it was the same. Like, if you're chill, they pick up off of that.
Yeah.
So, it's like I believe as much as you can, just try not to be panicked about it. Of course, it's going to be stressful the first couple times, but it is. And some people will say babies shouldn't be on planes. Like, to all of those people, like, with all due respect, take a seat. Like
Yeah,
this
I
is what the
what?
U.S. is so negative. The U.S. hates babies. I'll encourage any parents out there, go international when you travel. I was in Portugal for a month with my son. They
Mhm.
love children. Every line, for immigration, they came up and got me with my child and brought me to the front.
Aw.
No one even said a thing. There's priority security line. You can use the
Mhm.
first class lane if you have a baby. I mean, I was in the Caribbean and, at dinner, like the waitresses at the resort will come up and say, "Hey, can I like hold your baby if you need help?" And it's like,
That's so
it's
sweet.
just such a there's so many countries where traveling with children is way more accepted than the US, but it is your
Right.
right to be there. Don't let any If anyone ever says babies shouldn't be on planes, be like, planes, just for the record, are public transportation. Like, if you want to control who sits on a plane with you, charter a jet. Full stop. Like, you're buying a ticket on the bus with wings just like the rest of us. If you want to be
Yeah.
fancy and try to say kids shouldn't be on planes, like, you should charter a jet. If not, get
Yeah.
out of my face. That's my
I
take
always
on it.
love when I see people with babies, especially in first class. I'm like, "Let's go. First class baby." Like,
True story. I've flown millions of miles. Unequivocally, drunk men have been the biggest belligerent annoyances on my flights than children have.
then babies.
And yes,
Facts.
babies will cry. But put headphones on. It's like everyone needs to get over this whole, we need babyless flights and blah blah blah. Like,
Those
it's
are
annoying.
available for a price.
Exactly. work
They all have
harder,
a
and
low
then
price. Exactly. I feel like,
not my problem.
yeah, the flights, I definitely am a little nervous on, and then I think just, like, maintaining time zones and schedules. How have you approached that? Are you kind of like, when
Yeah.
baby's sleeping,
So, I mean,
baby naps?
yes, ideally. So it's actually funny. Like a night flight to Europe's way easier. I was flying home from St. Lucia,
Mhm.
and actually I was flying to St. Lucia, and it was we had to leave the house where he usually sleeps till like 7:30, and we woke him up at like 5, and he was just pissed from that point on. And when babies get off schedules, that it's like it can be hard. Like my kid's super chill, but like when he's overtired, that's when he'll like cry. It's a sad cry where I'm like, oh my god, this is his tired cry.
Like,
But like
dad.
it's like, and I don't blame him. I hate, being groggy too. So I will highly recommend when you have a choice, like my son sleeps from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Night flights are such a breeze, right? Like, or you try to at least as much as you can keep them on a schedule. But especially as kids get older, it's just bring toys for them, keep them stimulated. Always, I mean, especially with babies, you always have to be prepared for a blowout diaper.
Yeah.
Always have extra outfits. Have a Ziploc bag where you can throw, if an outfit gets gross, just be able to throw stuff and throw it away. Always have extra wipes, or you're always going to need extra bottles. But overall, I felt like flight attendants are, even the TSA has been really nice. I
Hmm.
think it's not as bad as people think. Having a baby, I like having a baby Bjorn. You don't want to leave your kid in
Mhm.
a stroller for too long. They say it's
Mhm.
really only supposed to be in a car seat for a couple hours. So in the airport, I wear my son throughout the
Mhm.
airport. He's overstimulated with everything going on, and then
Yeah.
once he gets on the plane, so you figure out, and you generally try to keep going with the routine of what works best for your kid.
Well, you can send me good travel juju because it's gonna be interesting. I really want to spend some of my maternity leave in Costa Rica with the baby and just like get out of the US because
Yeah.
I'll give birth in November and I'd get winter blues. I'm like, get me out of here.
Yeah.
Let's go. And I just think
Yeah. I
babies
have
are
my
happier in the sun.
No, 100%. So I had my baby October 8th, and we were in the Caribbean in February. And being on the beach, we went to Canoan Island in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So if
Mm,
anyone is looking for a luxury Caribbean resort, Mandarin Oriental Canoan is unbelievable. It's like 30
mm.
villas. There's nothing else really to do in Canoan Island, but it's just stunning beaches. It's so chill. But yeah, I mean, babies, go outside with them. Almost every baby I know, like, I feel like people try to protect their babies so much and like keep them locked up, but that's actually not the best thing for them. They need
Yeah.
fresh air. They need
Yeah.
so I know. Yeah, go and do a maternity. I actually spent the month of I split my paternity up in two because in the beginning
Hmm.
it's amazing. Obviously, especially as
Yeah.
a mother,
Newborn.
you'll want to get that bonding time, but splitting it up when he was 5 months old was so because when they're 5 months, they're so much more interactive and like so we spent the
Yeah.
month of March in Portugal, and that was amazing. So,
That's a great suggestion. I
you
hadn't
know,
thought about splitting up my maternity leave, but I think that's probably best. That's actually a really
because
good
I'll be honest,
suggestion.
in the beginning, like you're probably going to be looking forward to getting back to work at a certain point. I mean, it's up to
Yeah.
it depends on everything. There's a lot of different factors, but I was looking for and I didn't have a super long paternity, but I was looking forward to getting back and then looking forward to my second set of paternity. And
Right.
everything with having
Yeah.
a kid, especially your first, in the beginning, your life's upside down. You're trying to figure out the new normal and sleep. And
Right.
even if you have a nanny or like there's so much getting used to with that it's really nice to enjoy a second set when you've got some reps under your belt and you're like,
Right.
okay, let's actually just spend quality time versus
And
like,
hey,
let's just, like the
exist.
chaos in the beginning.
Yeah, so fun.
Exactly.
I wanted to shift to Travel Noir. So I bought Travel Noir in 2017, and the founder Zim is incredible. She really had a vision of building a brand that could show people that one, people who are of color, hey, you can live like an incredible life and be of the diaspora and travel. And like it is not abnormal. There's plenty of people who do it. And then also to pressure the travel industry to be more inclusive. And when we first bought it, they were offering trips and tours. They didn't really have a media component. They had a huge Instagram account, but no like website with informational articles. We've struggled quite a bit, I think, to monetize it programmatically. Of course, we get the sponsorships with airlines and automotive and brand deals. That's what we do best. But one of the things that I've noticed in the last 18 months is that there's really very few POC or multicultural media companies that have done affiliates at scale. Like I
Hmm.
really actually can't think of any that are brands, maybe some bloggers, but I mean like scale, like your scale. And I'm curious, do you think it's just a lack of people just don't know how the affiliate world works? Or do you think there's like some sort of bias or system that we're just like not getting? Like, what's your perspective?
Well, I think the affiliate world is really, it can be really rich, but it's also really tough. Like most affiliate, unless you have mass volume, the New York Times wire cutter where you're owning page one of every major gear, luggage, etc. It's hard to really make fundamentally like game changing for us. I mean, I got into affiliates in 2011 before most any other site. We have the authority there. And then we are the points guy, which is like it's all
Interesting.
about it's so on core to our brand, credit cards, and we have a whole team of people that we constantly create new credit card content. And that's really where the money is in affiliates in the travel space.
Mm,
Of course, there's, because flights don't pay anything, hotels kind of do, cruises and bookings, but you got to have mass, and with your brand Travel Noir, I mean, the beauty of it is it's everything travel. That being said, you create, the Travel Noir cruises, like Black people
mhm,
cruising and, a lot of
mhm,
entertaining and informative content, which, actually at the Points Guy, like 4 years ago, he hired Gene Sloan, who was a USA
mhm.
Today cruise writer. But we struggled. I mean, honestly, we have a huge audience, but we've even struggled to actually make decent revenue on bookings. And, you know,
Mm.
so it's challenging, because you can have really popular content. And let me just like give a kudos to the whole Travel Noir Instagram team.
Yeah, they're fun.
I it's that it's amazing. I mean, and I love like the thought-provoking discussions. It's not just travel porn. And that's
Mm-mm.
what I really want to give the kudos to. It's because there's so many travel sites where it's just drone footage of Bali and blue
Beautiful.
water. And okay, that's great. And we all need a little bit of like an instant escape. But Travel Noir, the point of view, whoever's running the social team, just truly kudos. I mean, and I love the discussions even about, in Africa, Black travelers going to Africa, and am I getting scammed by a local because the prices are different or am I not? Right. And just having the
Mhm.
discussion there with different
Within the
viewpoints.
diaspora. Yeah, it's so fun.
Yeah. That has never existed before. And I think it's done in such a way that's not sensational and it's not hateful. It's like the brand is uplifting. And even not as a person of color, I find it wildly entertaining. One of my favorite Instagram accounts. But yeah,
Yes.
monetization in media is tough. But I think for your brand, I think, events, conferences,
Yeah, we haven't
merch.
done
A
that
lot
for
of my
Travel
friends are
Noir.
the merch can be really big, and especially in the travel space, there's not a lot of people saying, "What do I actually need to bring on a trip?" So I think there are big opportunities, but it's not easy. It takes a while.
Mm-mm.
But I think your brand is so positive and uplifting, like going after those corporate sponsorships, big, the big deals, because people want to be associated with your brand because you
They
bring people
do.
into the
But
fold,
you
and
know
I
how these
that
brands
is so
are.
needed immediate. I
It's
know,
hard because they
I know.
also want exclusivity, which I'm like, "Come on."
Hmm.
You can't have
Yeah,
exclusivity, and then 2, a lot of companies do bad shit to Black people. So,
yeah,
you got a brand deal with an airline, and then 2 months later, that airline throws somebody off the
yeah.
plane, and then you're upset we're writing about it. I'm like, "But did it happen?" So,
Right,
like,
right. No,
if
it's
if
tough.
we don't write about it, who will? Like, it's literally our job.
Right.
So, it's, the brand deals are fine, but I just feel like we're always dependent on
Yeah.
how much we play nice within the system as opposed
Yeah.
to your point, like, we have such a rich, incredible audience that is moving so much throughout the ecosystem, booking flights, booking hotels, organizing their own trips with their friends. And I mean, people have Travel Noir WhatsApp groups that we don't even regulate. Like
Yeah.
people just like self-organize trips with each other.
Mhm.
And it's like, oh man, this is lovely, but like we're literally not participating in this economy at all.
I know you're I love the hotel reviews where this is how much I spend and this is a review, and it's like, you probably drove so much business to that hotel.
So
And
much
it's great because
business.
at the end of the day, you're about your end user and you're allowing
Yes.
people to experience things. But I understand the frustration of like, how do I monetize this? I should get a
Yeah.
cut, but
Or
it's
like
tricky.
my employees,
Yeah.
it's like they work really hard and the bigger the brand gets, the more we can like do and build.
Yeah.
So I think it's actually really affirming for me to hear you talk about like, yeah, it is difficult to monetize certain types and like actually the bread and butter to some extent is the financial services industry. It's just really well set up. And we haven't explored that as much because so much disclosures and
Well, we should
regulations and
talk
things of
offline.
that nature.
Our brand should collaborate on
Yeah.
like,
We'll call Rick.
credit
Let's send this
card
video to Rick
content.
later.
Yeah. Hey, Rick. Rick's
I agree. I agree. But anyways, enough business. Yeah, I mean, really, those are the main things I wanted to talk about. Is there anything else that's on your list or things you wanted to share?
No, I mean, I will plug, we have the Points Guy app, which is for people out there who want to get into the points world. I think the biggest thing is it could be like, how many points do I have? When are they going to expire? The system's against me, right? So using technology, and of course, I'm going to plug the Points Guy app. It's free, and it's the only app that'll actually give you your net worth in points. And I think the first step in financial education is like, track whether it's your finances or investments, so you can track your points. And then we also have a lot of other tools that are going to be rolling out, like based on what you spend, what credit card should you get that to get you where you want to go. And I would just, there's another at sites that we don't own at it. Like technology is all the difference. I love a site called point.me. It's
Hmm.
actually a site that'll, if you say I have Amex points and I want to go to Paris on these days in June, it'll actually search all the different airlines or hotel partners. Actually, no, it's
Hmm.
just airline partners of your credit card. So if you have Amex points and you want to go to Paris, it'll actually tell you, hey, instead of transferring to Delta, which is 400,000 miles, you can actually transfer to Virgin and book the same flight for 57,500. So I found that site to be very, very helpful in helping to navigate because so many people have points, but then they're like, is
Yeah.
this a good way to use them?
Right.
And then the final thing I'll plug is if you pay rent, I
Hmm.
helped start a company called Built, BILT. It's the only credit card with no annual fee, and you can earn points on rent with no fees. So there's no
Critical.
3% fee to pay. They'll even send a check to your landlord. And back to our discussion on building credit, because you're paying your largest expense, which for most people rent is on the credit, you're earning points, but it's also improving your credit.
Wow.
So I'm proud of what we built at Built, and it's just a no-brainer, no annual fee card. So if you
That's
pay
great.
rent and you're not earning points, I would look into that.
Yeah, I feel like our demo probably will love that. So I'm sure definitely get a lot of downloads. I'm going to
That's
download the
another
app,
part. Yeah.
which I
And
didn't
I
I
should
didn't know
connect you
about.
with the Built. I'm gonna afterwards. I want to connect you with the Built team too, because there should be like a partnership there as well.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I'm down. Let's do it. Well, Brian, thank you so much for your time today. I learned a lot, and now my brain is like, how do I book? The key takeaway for me is the restaurants. I didn't even think about the fact that we do all these team dinners and all this stuff, and like we're not strategic about leveraging the right restaurants and all the things. And then the second takeaway that I have is to call to book my hotels because yeah, no, I'm just click, click, click and done with it. And now I know. So I'll let you know how that goes.
And all your baby shopping, your baby is going to be so
Hey, all my
expensive, but
baby's
make sure
shopping.
all the stuff you buy do the online shopping portals.
Well, I'm
It adds
hoping
up
that I get
very
most of my
quickly.
things gifted. So,
Yes.
anyone listening who's like, Morgan, you going to try our carrier? I'm in. Just send it to my PO box. All right,
Thanks
Brian,
so much
enjoy
for
your
having me.
day. Thanks so much.
Safe
Thanks
travels.
for listening to the Journey Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you leave a review and head to our Instagram and YouTube to leave a comment. I look forward to hearing how this podcast has made an impact on your own journey.